8 years, 1.3 million refugees, and still no home to return to. The world's largest refugee camp in the Cox's Bazar region of Bangladesh is on the brink of disaster. It is in this context, in the recently held meeting of United Nations General Assembly in New York, the chief advisor or interim advisor of Bangladeshi government, Muhammad Yunus, has drawn attention of the entire world toward this crisis as such, and he has issued a chilling warning. The warning is that if countries all across the world do not unite and take strong actions against the worsening crisis of refugees, soon this crisis can spiral into catastrophe. Now the question is that, is the world listening? Let us try to understand and delve deeper in this particular topic. So first of all, recently we know that United Nations General Assemblies and its 80th session is being conducted in the New York, that is United States of America, and it is this meeting where the platform is being used by the interim advisor, chief advisor of the Bangladeshi government, Muhammad Yunus, about the Rohingya refugee crisis as such. He has talked about the worsening situation, and he has asked the entire world to take a global collective action to avert this catastrophic situation. So first of all, you have to understand the scale of this crisis, and the scale is humongous because we are talking about not few hundred or few thousands of refugees. We are talking about refugees that is spanning over millions and millions of numbers. So 1.3 million Rohingya refugees currently is being hosted in the Bangladesh, in the bordering areas of Bangladesh and Myanmar, and the region is called as Cox's Bazar as such. This refugee crisis erupted somewhere in the year 2017 when the Myanmar witnessed a massive brutal military crackdown where the civilian government was in a coup d'etat, removed from the power, and military junta took charge of the country as such. And this led to an ethnic-based persecution where Rohingya minority who belong to the Muslim Islam, basically they had to flee Myanmar because there was risk to their life as such. And this we can understand also how significant is this crisis, because United Nations in a clear term, concise term, has stated that this is a textbook example of ethnic cleansing which has been carried out by the Myanmarese junta against the Rohingya ethnic minority as such. And because of the no option, they had to flee, and they have fled in the Bangladesh. And from Bangladesh we also have seen some of the Rohingya refugees trickling into the border areas of India as well, especially in the northeastern region. Now, obviously, when you talk about the worsening humanitarian situation, what actually Muhammad Yunus has tried to explain is that, first of all, the shelters that we have, now we know that especially after coming of Donald Trump administration, the US aid has cut off any kind of aid supply to the Bangladesh. This also has resulted in the worsening of crisis. So first of all, the bamboo shelters where the Rohingya refugees have been hosted, it is becoming overcrowded in nature. There is a problem with sanitation. There is a closure of schools, and education is also being restricted. Access is especially restricted as far as the Rohingya refugees and the children are concerned. Aid cuts, growing food insecurity has led to a situation where Muhammad Yunus has stated that now Bangladesh government can only afford $6 for every person, every refugee as such, and because of such a small number, the ration cutoff will also fall, basically ration supply will also fall, and that can create a further new problem of a starvation, hunger, and instability in the neighboring areas of Bangladesh as such. Now, if you try to look at the what is the region behind this crisis and how we can solve, I would want to bring your attention to the fact that, like CS Academy, we are going to soon commence batches. The batches are going to be commenced on the 16th of October. This is going to be the regular batch for the weekday students, and the 4th and 20th October is when we are going to start batches for the weekend students, for those especially these aspirants who are preparing for the civil services along with a full-time job or full-time education. Now, we have a lot of features and program in the courses and programs as such. For example, we focus on the comprehensive coverage of GS papers. We have one-to-one mentorship and doubt solving sessions. We also ensure regular interaction with educators, and we believe that there has to be an integrated preparation for the UPSC, and from the beginning you have to focus on daily mains answer writing practice, get it evaluated, appear in the test both of prelims and mains. Then based on the feedback, then further you can streamline your preparation as such. If you want to know more detail about these programs and the features, you can give a call to the number being displayed here. You can also download our app and can click the link in the description box of this particular video. Now, in this context, when Muhammad Yunus basically went to United Nations General Assembly, he has talked about that the crisis coming to a situation where the entire refugee system itself and this basically their protection system itself can collapse if urgent global action is not taken. Here, he is trying to say that Bangladesh itself cannot be asked to shoulder the responsibility of hosting such a huge number of refugees. First of all, because Bangladesh itself is facing economic crisis, it does not have the enough resources, and thus there has to be enhanced contribution from the donors, that is international institutions, national institutions, and they all have to come forward if they want this crisis to solve. Second, also he has stated that Bangladesh is a second victim after the refugee crisis, Rohingya crisis. And if you try to look at the map where this entire situation is unfolding, so you can see from here, this is the Myanmar, and the bordering region of Bangladesh is where you have the region called as Cox's Bazar. So obviously, because Cox's Bazar is border areas of Myanmar, most of Rohingya refugees have trickled down through this area itself. Now, it's not only that it is a humanitarian crisis, but also experts argue it can very well trigger a regional security crisis also, because first of all, Myanmar itself is now in a very great extent of stability. It is facing a greater extent of instability because of the civil warlike situation that is prevailing there. For example, the entire state of Myanmar is not being controlled by a single ruler, single military, or single party. It is being controlled by multiple rebel groups, and in the eastern part specifically, along the borders of Bangladesh, the control is being exercised by a rebel group that is called as Arakan Army. So this ongoing conflict in Myanmar's Rakhine state threatens the stability of this entire region. And here India has been concerned also, because if there is instability in this area, it will ensure the organized crime activities, insurgent group based activities, and the region can see a large scale trafficking, whether it is narcotics trafficking, whether it is weapons trafficking, or even the human trafficking as such. And this will also further complicate the security situation in the northeastern region of India. And also because of the escalating fighting, we have seen taking place between Myanmar's junta and Arakan army, there is a large scale displacement that is going on. For example, in the state of Manipur, we have seen a lot of people coming from the Myanmar Chin state because they are being displaced as well. Now, as per the recent report, what Muhammad Yunus is trying to say is that around 150,000 new displacement has been observed, and this is additional people who have been added in the refugee camp, who have entered the refugee camp in the past few years itself. And thus, the only solution that now we can have is the safe return of Rohingya back to the Myanmar, but that also remains a problem. So how we solve it, this is something that everyone has to think about. Now, as far as the political dimensions of this entire situation is concerned, so first of all, persecution and marginalization in Rakhine state has continued, and that is why rather than dipping in the number, or rather than decline in the number of refugees, we have seen further increase in numbers. Yunus has stressed that there is need for equal rights and citizenship for the Rohingyas, because Rohingyas claim that Myanmar's government, Myanmar's administration has refused to accept them as a legal citizens of Myanmar, as a inhabitant of Myanmar, and that is why this is what we have to focus upon. Second, reversal of systematic exclusion cannot wait. And third, he has stated that crisis, though it seems it is bilateral crisis because largely the states of Bangladesh and Myanmar are involved here, but he is trying to explain that it is not a bilateral crisis, rather it requires regional and global responsibility, and that is what he is trying to explain. Now, as far as the international responsibility is concerned, Yunus has urged that the pressure on Myanmar's military and ethnic group has to increase. This is the only way when we can stop the ethnic persecution and can further stop the influx of migrants. Second, there has to be wider global community to share burden. Now, this burden we are talking about, or he is talking about, is the financial burden, economic burden, because as of now, it is largely the Bangladeshi administration who is taking care of these Rohingyas, and also the aid was the major sources of revenue through which they were helping them, but now aid also has been cut up, especially the US aid, which made the large chunk of Bangladesh's this is what you can call as the aid supply. Now, thus he has talked about the collective responsibility that should be the dictum if you want to solve this crisis, and this crisis is framed as a global issue, not just Bangladesh's issue as such. So what is the expectation? That also he has explained in his address. He has stated that on the September 30, 2025, in this particular regard, there is going to be a high-level conference, and the objective of this high-level conference should be to mobilize new funding, especially in the absence of old traditional sources of funding. There should be a time-bound basically roadmap that how Rohingyas can be resettled and sent back to the Myanmar. In this regard, a lot of efforts were made by the Bangladeshi government, but due to the differences in opinion with the Bangladeshi military as well as Myanmar's military, Myanmar's rebel group, this did not come to fruition as such. So, permanent solution cannot be considered to be, any solution cannot be considered as permanent solution unless and until there has to be a time-bound roadmap for returning back refugees back to Myanmar. And thus, he is trying to galvanize the global resolve for sustained settlement of this entire issue. Now, we have to wait, watch and see how this entire situation unfolds in the next few days, next few years, and whether Rohingya can get any state or not, because as of now they are being classified as the largest group of stateless refugees. So that is all about this particular video. If you like the video, please hit the like button, share it, subscribe to the channel for more such content. Thank you very much.